The gunshot that split Red Hollow's dying light came from nowhere and everywhere at once, echoing off the weathered buildings like a promise of violence. Elias Kane's half-starved mare stumbled at the sound, her front leg buckling as they crested the hill, overlooking what remained of the frontier town. Below, in the amber glow of sunset, 6 armed men on horseback surrounded the only building that still showed signs of life, a ramshackle saloon with peeling red paint and broken dreams. Elias should have kept riding. His 3 remaining coins jangled mockingly in his empty pocket, his gun holsters hung as hollow as his belly, and his mare wheezed with each labored breath. He was nobody's cavalry, just another broken man fleeing the ghosts of his failures. But something in the scene below made him dismount instead. Maybe the way 2 women stood defiantly in the saloon's doorway, while a boy clutched a wooden gun behind them, or maybe it was the cold smile on the lead rider's face that reminded him too much of other powerful men he'd known. Clayton Drayton sat his black stallion like a king surveying conquered territory, his expensive suit immaculate despite the desert dust. His pale eyes swept over the women with the casual hunger of a predator who'd already decided on his prey. 24 hours, ladies, he called out, his voice carrying the cultured tones of Eastern education and Western ruthlessness. Sign over the deed to this establishment, or I'll be forced to remove you by less gentle means. The woman in the doorway stepped forward, and Elias felt his breath catch. Lila Voss moved with the fluid grace of spilled wine, her midnight hair catching the last rays of sun like liquid obsidian. Her burgundy dress, though worn thin at the edges, clung to curves that spoke of both strength and femininity. Shoulders squared with determination, waist narrow above hips, that swayed with unconscious sensuality. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold, dark as midnight storms, holding depths of pain and fury that could drown a weaker man. "You'll get this saloon over my dead body, Drayton," she said, her voice carrying the smoky warmth of aged whiskey and the steel of a woman who'd already buried one husband and refused to bury her dreams with him. Beside her, auburn fire blazed in human form. Cora Blaine leaned against the doorframe with predatory ease, her cream-colored blouse unbuttoned just enough to reveal the hollow of her throat and hint at fuller curves beneath. Her emerald eyes held secrets and promises of violence, scanning Drayton's men with the calculating gaze of someone who'd once hunted their kind for bounty money. When she moved, adjusting her position with feline grace, her dark skirt molded to thighs that had once gripped a horse's flanks during wild chases across 3 territories. "Same goes for me, you son of a bitch," Cora added, her voice a throaty purr that somehow made the profanity sound like poetry. Elias's mare chose that moment to collapse entirely, sending him stumbling down the hillside in a cascade of loose stones and bitter irony. By the time he picked himself up and dusted off his threadbare coat, 6 pairs of hostile eyes were fixed on him. "Problem here?" he asked, stepping between the women and the guns despite every instinct screaming at him to run. Drayton's smile widened like a crack in ice. "Just conducting business, stranger. I suggest you move along before you find yourself involved in something that's none of your concern." "Funny thing about bullies," Elias replied, his gray eyes steady despite the hunger gnawing at his belly. "They always seem to make their problems everyone's concern." Behind him, he felt rather than saw the 2 women exchange glances. Lila's sharp intake of breath told him she was studying his worn sheriff's coat, the badge long gone, but the bearing unmistakable. Cora's soft chuckle suggested she was measuring his shoulders and finding them adequate despite the threadbare fabric. "Don't mistake us for helpless women needing rescue," Lila said, and Elias caught the metallic glint of steel tucked into her boot. "I've buried one husband already," I can bury more, if needed. 3 coins and a dying horse, Cora observed, her voice holding amusement and calculation in equal measure. Either you're running from something, stranger, or running toward your grave. Both, probably. Elias kept his attention on Drayton while acutely aware of the heat radiating from the women behind him. Lila's jasmine perfume mixing with gunpowder and determination. Cora's wild rose scent tempered with leather and steel. But I've never been one to let wolves circle sheep. Drayton's men shifted restlessly, hands drifting toward their weapons. The boy, Sammy, Elias would learn, pressed closer to Lila's skirts, his toy gun forgotten as real violence threatened to erupt. You're making a mistake, stranger, Drayton warned, but uncertainty flickered across his features. Men like him understood money and fear. They rarely knew what to do with simple stubbornness. Wouldn't be my first. Elias planted his feet wider, hands loose at his sides. Won't be my last, either. The standoff stretched like a bowstring until Sheriff Morrison, Drayton's bought and paid for lapdog, cleared his throat nervously. Maybe we should come back tomorrow, Mr. Drayton. Let folks think about your generous offer. Drayton's jaw tightened, but he was politician enough to recognize when a tactical retreat served better than a Pyrrhic victory. 24 hours, he repeated, his gaze lingering on Lila's defiant posture and Cora's promising curves. Think carefully, ladies. Red Hollow's no place for women alone. As the riders disappeared in a cloud of dust and muttered threats, Elias felt his knees nearly buckle from exhaustion and hunger. The adrenaline that had carried him through the confrontation was fading fast, leaving him swaying on his feet. Inside, Lila commanded, her voice brooking no argument. Before you collapse and give Drayton the satisfaction. The Crimson Rose's interior surprised him. Despite the peeling exterior, the inside was clean and well-maintained, with polished wood and oil lamps that cast warm pools of light across mismatched furniture. The air smelled of coffee, wood smoke, and the lingering perfume of the 2 women who'd saved his stubborn hide. Lila moved behind the bar with practiced efficiency, her hips swaying as she reached for bottles on high shelves, the motion pulling her dress taut across curves that would distract a saint. When she leaned forward to pour him coffee, the lamplight caught the swell of her breasts above the dress's modest neckline, and Elias forced himself to focus on her eyes instead. Eat first, she said, sliding a plate of stew across the bar. Questions after. Cora had settled into a chair with her legs crossed, her skirt riding up to reveal trim ankles in worn leather boots. She watched him eat with the patient attention of a cat studying a mouse, occasionally sipping whiskey from a glass that seemed too delicate for her calloused hands. Sheriff's coat, she observed, after he'd wolfed down half the stew. But no badge, no gun, and running on empty. What's your story, lawman? Between bites, Elias told them. Silver Creek, 2 years ago. Clayton Drayton's mining consortium, moving in with offers that sounded too good, and contracts written in poison ink. When Elias refused to look the other way, at claim jumping and mysterious accidents, evidence had appeared in his office, evidence that painted him as the corrupt one. Drayton's good at making problems disappear, Lila said, refilling his coffee. Her fingers brushed his as she set the cup down, the contact electric despite its brevity. He made my husband disappear into a mine shaft when Thomas wouldn't sell our land. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate, but her slight nod suggested they were enough. Don't be. Thomas was a good man, but he wasn't a fighter. Her dark eyes met his, holding depths of grief and determination that made his chest tight. I am. Cora leaned forward, her blouse gaping slightly, to reveal the lace edge of her chemise. My turn. I used to hunt men like Drayton for bounty. Tracked his partner Jake Morrison to Tombstone last year. Not the sheriff, his cousin. Jake had raped and killed a rancher's daughter in Colorado. What happened? Jake died resisting arrest. Officially. Her smile was sharp as a blade. Drayton had Jake's cousin appointed sheriff here as payment for keeping quiet. That's when I knew he was bigger game than I'd thought. The puzzle pieces clicked together in Elias's tired mind. Red Hollow's sitting on something valuable. Silver, Lila confirmed. Probably the richest vein in the territory. Drayton's been buying up claims for pennies, forcing people out with violence and legal tricks. We're the last holdouts. Why not just sell and move on? Lila's laugh held no humor. With what money? And where would we go? She gestured toward the stairs. My 6-year-old daughter Ellie is sleeping up there. This saloon, this town. It's all the home she's ever known. And I've got nowhere else to run, Cora added, swirling the whiskey in her glass. Drayton's got a long memory and longer reach. Better to make a stand here than keep looking over my shoulder. Elias studied the two women, Lila's fierce maternal protection wrapped in silk and steel, Cora's predatory competence disguised as frontier beauty. They were magnificent and terrifying in equal measure, and he was already half in love with both of them. So what's the plan? Plan, Cora laughed, the sound rich and dangerous. Honey, we're making this up as we go along. All we know is Drayton wants us gone, and we're not going. There has to be something, Elias insisted. Some weakness, some leverage. There is. Lila's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow made the saloon feel smaller, more intimate. Drayton's mining claims. Thomas kept meticulous records before he died. Property boundaries, mineral rights, everything. The claims Drayton's filed, they don't match the original surveys. Cora sat up straighter, her eyes brightening. Fraud? Bigger than that. Forgery, claim jumping, probably murder. Enough to bring territorial marshals down on him like hellfire. Where are these records? Lila's hand moved to her bodice, and Elias tried not to follow the gesture too obviously. Safe place, but proving fraud won't help if we're dead. Then we make sure we're not the ones who end up dead. Elias pushed back from the bar, decision crystallizing in his mind. I need to know if you can both shoot. Cora's smile was pure invitation. Honey, I can put 6 shots through a playing card at 50 paces. In the dark. During a thunderstorm. And I, Lila said with quiet dignity, once killed a rattlesnake from my kitchen window while it was threatening Ellie in the yard. 1 shot, 30 yards. Good. Elias felt something awakening in his chest. Not just attraction to these remarkable women, but purpose. For the first time since Silver Creek, he had something worth fighting for. Then tomorrow we give Drayton an answer he won't forget. Dawn painted Red Hollow's main street in shades of blood and gold, the morning light harsh and unforgiving on the weathered buildings. Elias stood in the street's center, flanked by the 2 women who'd given him reason to stop running. His borrowed gun belt felt strange after 2 years of going unarmed, but Cora had produced weapons from her mysterious past with the efficiency of a frontier quartermaster. Lila moved with lethal grace beside him, her burgundy dress flowing around curves that could distract a man at the wrong moment. But these weren't the wrong men, and this wasn't the wrong moment. She'd pinned her midnight hair back severely, revealing the elegant line of her neck and the determined set of her jaw. The derringer in her boot was matched by a navy colt at her hip, the gun belt emphasizing the swell of her hips and the deadly competence in her dark eyes. Cora had abandoned subtlety entirely. Her cream blouse was tucked into dark trousers that hugged every line of her athletic figure, her auburn hair braided back for action. Twin colts rode her hips like old friends, and when she moved, checking cylinders and adjusting holsters, every gesture spoke of professional violence wrapped in undeniable femininity. "Like old times," she murmured, her voice carrying anticipation and hunger in equal measure. "Better than old times," Layla replied, her smoky tone holding promise and steel. "This time, we're fighting for something that matters." Drayton came with 8 men this time, their rifles gleaming in the morning light like promise of bloodshed. But he'd made a crucial mistake. He'd underestimated what he was facing. "This is your last chance, Kane," Drayton called from horseback, his expensive suit incongruous above the dusty street. "Walk away now, and the women only get run out of town. Stay, and you all die." "Counteroffer," Elias replied, his voice carrying clearly in the morning air. "You turn around and ride out, and I don't tell the territorial marshal about your mining claims fraud." Drayton's face went white beneath his carefully groomed mustache. "You can't prove anything." Lila stepped forward with fluid grace, her movement drawing every eye to the sway of her hips and the papers she withdrew from her bodice, a gesture that somehow made legal documents seem intimate and dangerous. "Your forged deeds, Clayton. 3 different handwriting samples, witnessed by men who died in convenient accidents." "And Jake Morrison's confession," Cora added, producing a folded letter from inside her shirt, the motion pulling the fabric taut across her breasts. Amazing what a dying man will admit when he thinks his soul's at stake, especially about who really ordered that rancher's daughter killed. The street fell silent, except for the whisper of wind through sage and the creak of leather as nervous hands moved toward guns. Drayton's men shifted uneasily, realizing they'd been backing the wrong horse in a rigged race. Sheriff Morrison, the bought and paid for variety, stepped away from Drayton's group with obvious reluctance. "I never signed up for murder, Clayton. This has gone too far." "You signed up for whatever I pay you for," Drayton snarled, his cultured facade cracking to reveal the brutal man beneath. "And I pay too much for you to develop a conscience now." "Then we do this the hard way." Drayton's hand dropped toward his gun. What happened next would be talked about in Red Hollow for decades. 3 shots rang out as one: Elias's borrowed Colt, Lila's Navy revolver, and Cora's right-hand gun speaking in perfect unison. Drayton dropped from his saddle, clutching his shoulder as his weapon spun away into the dust. His men, faced with the coordinated violence of 2 professional fighters and 1 very angry mother, had the good sense to drop their rifles and reach for sky. "Anyone else feel like Dino's testing their luck?" Cora asked conversationally, her left-hand gun still holstered but ready. The silence stretched until Sheriff Morrison slowly unbuckled his gun belt. "I quit," he announced to no one in particular. "Good choice," Lila said, her smoking revolver steady on the remaining men. "Now all of you, get your boss to a doctor, and then get out of my town." As Drayton's men carried their wounded leader away, muttering about territorial marshals and federal charges, Elias felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he'd carried since Silver Creek. 6 months later, the Crimson Rose was the most prosperous establishment in Red Hollow's silver boom. Federal marshals had indeed come, bringing with them mining engineers, territorial judges, and enough legal firepower to unravel Drayton's empire completely. The silver claims reverted to their rightful owners, compensation was paid to victims' families, and Red Hollow transformed from dying frontier town to thriving mining community. Elias wore a deputy's badge again, elected this time, not appointed, and took satisfaction in earning respect rather than demanding it. The badge felt right on his chest, especially when pinned there by Lila's gentle fingers each morning. Lila ran the crimson rose with an iron fist in a silk glove, her beauty now matched by a reputation for fairness and strength. When she moved through the crowded saloon in the evenings, men watched with desire tempered by respect for what she'd built from ashes and determination. Her midnight hair caught the lamplight as she settled disputes, negotiated deals, and mothered not just Ellie, but half the miners who'd made Red Hollow their home. Cora had established Red Hollow Security Services, her reputation for accuracy and uncompromising justice bringing clients from 3 counties. She still favored form-fitting clothes that emphasized her dangerous curves, but now they were symbols of a woman who chose her own terms and enforced them with deadly precision. Funny how things work out, Elias mused one evening, watching Sammy and Ellie play in the saloon's backyard, while miners' wives tended gardens that would have been impossible 6 months before. Nothing funny about it, Lila said, her hand finding his with familiar warmth. Her touch still sent fire through his veins, but now it carried the comfort of commitment alongside passion. We chose to fight. We chose each other. Cora joined them on the porch, her emerald eyes reflecting the sunset and holding contentment that would have seemed impossible during their desperate stand. Some families are born, she said, her voice soft with wonder at her own words. Others are forged in fire and tempered with blood. The 3 of them sat in comfortable silence, watching their chosen family play, while the town they'd saved bustled with new life around them. Elias thought about the broken man who'd ridden into Red Hollow with nothing but empty pockets and empty holsters, and marveled at what determined people could accomplish when they found something worth defending. In the distance, the silver mines glittered with promise, and the future stretched before them like an open trail leading to whatever adventures awaited. But tonight, surrounded by the women who'd given him back his purpose and the children who called him Pa, Elias Kane was exactly where he belonged.